what you're looking at here is the brand new REIFF Knives F4 Bushcrafter and Survival Knife. Technically this is a prototype, but they are shipping now on a Kickstarter. You can check that out. I'm going to tell you more about that at the end of the video here. I'll just tell you guys, I was super stoked to finally get this thing in hand a little over a month ago, and I immediately, as soon as I got it, I immediately started putting it to use, around the house over at my wood pile where I go, and I do a lot of carving and woodcraft over there, some bushcraft when I'm bored, and I put it to hard use over there, and then I took it on some trips. And this is not the kind of knife that stayed in my backpack. This is a knife that stayed on my side because I was using it constantly, trying to dull it down, trying to sometimes misuse it, and did well, did really well. Let's go over some specs quickly. Overall length is 9 inches, blade length 4 inches, cutting edge is 3.8 technically, the blade width is 1.11 inches, blade thickness is 5/32, and the blade material, here's an awesome point, CPM 3V, love 3V guys. Blade style is a drop point, the edge type is a convex, the blade grind is a hollow saber, the finish is an acid stone wash. Handle length, which you're looking at there, is 5 inches. And check this out, the handle width is 1.1 inches. If you watch my channel, you know I love that. Handle thickness is 0.95 inches. Really great handle. Handle material is G10. And the weight of the knife overall, even with all those specs, big piece of 3V, it's only 8.2 ounces, so that's not bad. I think that fits really well for that belt style knife. I don't think it's overly heavy. It does come with the Kydex sheath, which is not pictured here. There's a few basic tests I gave, and I started with cutting the cheese. So I cut a dense block of cheese here. Cheese is a difficult medium for like Scandi knives to cut. A lot of knives actually struggle with this. And even though I slipped there, for the most part, it did super well. For being a hollow saber grind with a convex edge, I was still able to get a nice thin slice of cheese out of that dense block there. So it did surprisingly well. Went to some strawberries. Strawberries, you can see it slices fine, and the tip is fine enough to cut out the cap on the strawberries. So that kind of means something. If it's too blunt of an edge or it's just too thick behind the edge, quite frankly, it doesn't slice very well, especially when it comes to soft fruits or vegetables, like what I'm doing here. I'm going to do a little thinner slice. It just can't do that if it's real thick behind the edge. So even though it's a convex, the hollow saber grind on it helps. It adds to the ability to do some thin cutting there. And I think slices like this, with a flat grind, sure it does better, but at the end of the day, a knife with the strength of a convex, it's very desirable. So doing a little more food. Oranges have a hard outer shell, that's not too difficult, but when you get down just to the soft, squishy parts, a blade that's not very sharp or too thick behind the edge or just too thick blade stock, it can't do what I'm doing now. It just smushes it, guys, or it just really splits it wide, and this is still doing nice thin slices. I don't do a lot of chopping with a tiny little belt knife. This is a 4-inch blade, but it did great for being an 8.2 ounce blade. I was around the house one day, I needed to take a limb off. I tried this knife out, and it really took some nice chops out of that wood. That's apple wood, actually, quite a hard wood to work with. And yeah, not difficult, not bad for a small knife at all. Moving on, I did a little bit of batoning in some different ways. I usually try to go not directly 90 degree against the grain. I try to go with the grain a little bit, and it did pretty well. I think this is probably abuse. It's kind of abuse on a blade, but honestly, modern bushcraft knives, this is the kind of thing you can do with them, and look how clean that cut was. I'm not going to give you hours of baton use because I don't use a knife that way, but with just that little tip hanging out there, there's not much there, but it's 3V, guys. It's a tough steel, and so I'm hitting it really hard. And a lot of weaker knives or knives that are just not made from an appropriate steel, first of all, I couldn't be beating on the tang of the knife, and I couldn't be hitting the very tip of it like that. It would break off, but this one handled it no problem. It was really not that difficult, even considering the double knots at the end of that log. It did pretty good, I thought. I moved on to some notching of different sorts, some bushcraft notching. Maybe you're making a chair or some furniture. This is a type of notch you'd probably do, and a Scandi here, guys, probably could have broke. That was pretty tough. But because of the blade stock thickness and the convex edge, there was no damage whatsoever. And yet, I can still clean up the cut, and it's thin enough and it's good enough for woodworking, which is really something I do a lot of. Quite honestly, I do a lot of woodworking. and so I need something that can at least do that well, and I thought it did great, especially considering it's not a Scandi. It's a convex hollow ground saber. Did great, kept the edge, still super sharp. You see this little brick I popped out here? It's a lot of pressure to put on a knife, and it did great. Moved on, I was making a little square notch here, so just with some general whittling. This is something you maybe do on a camping trip. You're making notches, making crafts, that kind of thing, sitting around the fire. And this was a really hard stick, actually. Believe it or not, this stick was super hard. I'm not sure why it was so hard, but it allowed me to kind of just use my dexterity, and I appreciate the smallness of the blade to get in and do some fine things like what I'm doing right there, using all sorts of parts of that edge, and all of them functioned very, very well to make a square notch there. Fire steel, I usually use a softer fire steel, and I thought this one did great. The 90 degree edge on a 3V blade, it's going to hold that 90 degree edge a long time, and it throws plenty of sparks. I've had no issues, used it all the time actually, very frequently. Alright, feather sticks. Of course, it wouldn't be a bushcraft knife if I didn't try some feather sticks. It wouldn't be a bushcraft review if I didn't do some feather sticks, right? Well, honestly, you could feather stick with a sharp piece of glass if you really needed to, or a sharp rock if you really needed to, and I have. But there's a few things that go into making good feather sticks. I think the choice of wood matters a lot. Actually, the stick I'm using in this video right here was not easy. The grain was not very consistent, and it moved around a little bit on me, but technique can overcome that. And then lastly, the grind angle matters quite a bit. And this being a hollow saber grind, I actually think that helps a lot. It's very conducive. It's not an overly thick knife, and the edge isn't thick. But the convex, like I've been using convex edges for a while on multiple knives, and I really prefer it over flat grind or Scandi when I'm making feather sticks. It did a really nice job, and it's very natural. It's easy to find that angle and roll some good feathers that easily light on a fire steel. Here's a cherry little pocket eater I made, and I did all the detail work and all the carving with that knife. And it's not as easy as a small Scandi, but it did really well, I thought, considering. So just showing you the blade there a little bit, and I'm going to do a kind of a stabby test here. Don't usually do something like that, but with a stabbing test, it typically kind of tests the strength of the blade and the edge and the tip. And I actually got the dang thing stuck in the block of wood. And so I did everything I could. I just smacked the thing a whole bunch of times, heaping abuse on it, stabbing it as hard as I could. Actually, it told me a little bit about the handle. The handle's pretty comfortable. It is. It really didn't give me hot spots, and it didn't hurt my hand. There's no sharp spots, which I appreciate. And then I just eventually took a hard log and beat the thing through that knot and that hard piece of wood. You can kind of see there's some bendy pieces there. It did great, though. I was not concerned about it at all. I just really trust 3V, especially for a bushcraft or survival knife. I think it's probably the right choice. One of the best in my humble opinion. A little bit more carving and notching, and I'll just tell you guys, I'm looking for hot spots. That's what I'm doing. When I'm doing just redundant woodwork like this, I want to know, are there any hot spots? And up on that forward, where normally a knife has a choil area, this doesn't have any hot spots. It's all round and smooth, and it's comfortable, and it's not overly thin. I just love it. I probably can't brag on it enough. Stu, you did a great job at making a knife that is just comfortable to hold on to for long periods of time, which in a bushcraft survival knife, you need that. And I just really think all knives should be like that nowadays, honestly. Doing some chest levers here. The end of the knife, the end of the tang there is very smooth and round. It's very bushcrafty, and so it doesn't hurt on my chest or my hand. I can grip on it, up on that knife, and it's got a nice 5-inch handle. And so I choke up as close as I can to get lots of power in those cuts, and it's taken huge chunks out. It skins the log just fine. I think you'll appreciate that if you're doing a lot of bushcraft tasks or making tent pegs and you're just trying to take the skin off the log. No issues. Something I will comment on here is I'm going to run into a knot here, and it's a really hard knot, and I'm doing it on purpose. That knot that's against the grain, and it's just an awkward knot. I think a Scandi would have chipped out here, guys, and I've done it before. Thin blades, flat grind knives with a thin edge. This one has the robustness and the convex that it just pretty much chopped right through it. Not concerned really about that edge at all, and 3V is so tough anyways. It did fantastic at that task, so pretty happy with it overall. One of the things I like to do when I get a knife right away is just to make like some tent pegs. I'm set up my tarp or something, and do a little bit of that carving, and it tells me again about the edge angles and the comfort of the handle. And what this told me was this thing was built purposely, intentionally, thoughtfully to do exactly the kind of things I'm doing right now and keep the edge a long time. Very happy with that. I do strap knives with 3V. I don't overly strap knives. I'm kind of not frequent. I think it likes a toothy edge a little bit, my opinion about 3V, so be careful to not overstrap it and dull the blade. But straps back easy enough. Kind of a surprise to me. So here's my final thoughts. I truly think it's a fantastic blade. The design of this blade is super cool. Typically you'll pay $100 more for something with Coke bottle handles like that with the removable scales and 3V steel. Stu did a really great job at executing a hollow saber grind knife that's still worthy of being called a bushcraft knife. And for the record, lots of knives call themselves a bushcraft knife and they're terrible at it. I'm usually a Scandi guy, but this thing converted me a bit. I'm going to tell you, I really like it. I'm going to keep this knife. I'm sure a huge part of it is the fact that the handle is just comfortable. I refuse to speak well of knives that have poorly designed handles. With my XL size hands, this one is going to fit my size hands, but also somebody who wears maybe like a medium size glove. I think it's really, really good. Great designs too on the handle. I can't praise that enough, I don't think. I did find the knife had great edge retention and it's very durable, which matters in a state like Minnesota where it can be 110 in the summer, then cool at night, and then in the winter we get down to around 55 below in my area, and it's just a very durable knife. No hot spots, works great in the carving and the survival tasks. I just have to say, well done, REIFF knives. I'm very happy with how it performed, and that's not just some sort of publicity thing, or I'm not just trying to push this product for him. I'm telling you, I personally really like the knife in lots of applications, honestly. So here's what you, the viewer, need to do if you're interested. There's a Kickstarter right now, and I have a link in the description as well as a pinned first comment. I want you to head over and check this out. I'm not an advocate for owning a bajillion blades, but I don't think you should own poor quality blades. Just a handful of those won't do good for you either. Sell those, buy one good replacement. If you like 3V or Bushcraft knives, this one's for you. Go check out those links or head over to REIFF Knives website to see more information about their next blade coming out soon. It's going to be an awesome blade. I'm really interested in their Leicu as well, but this one for now, man, I'm just loving it. Thank you, Stu, for the opportunity to review this honestly with integrity, and I'm just going to encourage everybody who's watching this, check out the other reviews that are being published today as well. They're going to give you an honest opinion about this blade, and I think it'll be similar to mine.